Did I know the world, so you're lovely.
Ready? All right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority Board of Directors to order. It is 6:33 p.m. So we call the roll.
Director Kent.
Here.
Director Flauner.
Here.
Director Chapman.
Here.
Director Annabelle is not present. Director Alexander.
Here.
Director Potter is not present. Director Gill, not present.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I would like to call for a motion to reorder the agenda to move closed session first and move new business item number 2, public hearing and presentation of the proposed fiscal year 2024-2025 budget and a work plan and position pay plan to new business item number 4. The new order will be public comments, announcement of closed session, report out minutes, consent, new business item 1, new business item 3, new business item 4, and then we'll end with new business item 2. Someone like to make a motion?
Happy to make the motion.
Second.
Okay, so we have a second from Director, first from Director Kennett and a second from Director Alexander. No? Walker, sorry.
Okay, Director Kennett,
Yes.
Director Flauner,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes,
Director Alexander.
yes. Okay, that motion to reorder passes. All right, wonderful. So at this time, any members of the public will have the opportunity to address the board on any item not on the agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any speakers on Zoom?
There are none.
Much. All right. Now we will announce regarding the items to be discussed in closed sessions or be made prior to closed session. Legal counsel. Take it
Good
away.
evening, Madam Chair. There was 2 items on closed session. One is anticipated litigation. One is existing litigation. The details are listed on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. So we will now convene a closed session.
Hi, Jeanette. This is
Hi.
Sarah Clark. Just to let you know, the board members are still currently in closed session.
Okay,
All right, great, thank you.
okay, thanks. Oh, there's the mute. Okay.
Right. So we've returned from closed session, legal counsel, is there anything to report?
Madam Chair, just one item, under existing litigation concerning California Public Utilities Commission application 2404-017, LS Power Grid California LLC. The board was fully updated on the OSA's protest to that application that was filed with the CPUC. And the board will be further informed in the future as this application is processed.
Okay, so the next item we have is the approval of the minutes for May 23rd, 2024. There a motion?
The first, the minutes of the 23rd.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. I wasn't here. I'll have to abstain.
Okay, so there's no motion. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, so we have a motion from Director Flyers. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, so motion from Director Flyer with a second by Director Alexander to approve the May 23rd meeting minutes. Call roll.
Director Kenneth,
Abstain.
Director Flaher,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Alexander,
Yes.
Director Potter.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes unanimously. Here, all right, and then now the next item is the approval of the consent items. Is anybody wishing to pull anything off consent? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Move approval of the consent calendar. I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve items 1 through 2 on the consent calendar, moved by Director Potter, second by Director Kennett. Call roll.
Okay. Director Kenneth,
Yes.
Director Flaher,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Alexander,
Yes.
Director Potter.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we are on to new business. Which is to. Okay, so presenting staff presentation of public hearing approval of the engineer's report. Levying the annual assessment for open space acquisition and maintenance district 1. Renewal from fiscal year 2024-2025. I'll take questions from the board and then open the floor to the public.
Good evening, Directors. Justina Teen, Fiscal Services Officer. Annually, the board receives and approves the final engineer's report for District 1 benefit assessment. And the engineer's report was compiled by SCI Consulting Group. And tonight, we do have Jeanette Heinzen here to address any questions regarding the report. And the engineer report does require the board to hold a public hearing and allow the public to comment on this item.
Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak?
Madam Chair,
No.
sorry to interrupt. You'll want to open the public
Oh.
hearing first
Okay, did not have it. Okay,
and then hear any public comment and then close the public hearing and then bring it back. to the
okay,
board.
so we're officially opening the public hearing for the approval of the engineer's report levying the annual assessment of open space acquisition and maintenance district number 1 renewal fiscal year 2025, 2024, 2025. Public hearing is now open.
There are no members of the public joining us via Zoom or in person.
Okay, any members of the board wish to comment? No? Okay. no
Madam
more?
Chair, I apologize.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
trying to be really formal with these
okay,
District 1 assessments, but just officially close the public hearing.
Yes.
I move that we close the public hearing.
okay. We have a motion to close the public hearing. For a second,
I second. We just need to close the public hearing. We don't need a motion to close it.
Okay, I will officially close the public hearing without a motion in a second. All right. Okay, the public hearing is now closed. All right, now we'll go on to that is number one. Now we're on item number two.
But we still need to vote.
Approval, yeah,
Of approval of the engineer's report in item one.
thank you. I'll get this one day.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve it in a second. I'm waiting for the. There we go. Okay, motion to adopt resolution 2034 approving the engineer's report and reviewing the assessment moved by Director Potter and second by Director Kenneth.
Director Kenneth,
Yes.
Director Flaher,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes,
Director Alexander,
yes.
Director Potter.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, now. We are on. Yeah, we are, make sure, okay, we're on item number. Two, right?
We reordered the agenda.
So we're, okay,
Mhm.
item number three. Okay, report from the Board of Directors ad hoc committee on financial sustainability.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take that one. So this is an informational item to the board. Informing you that, or reminding you that in the fall of 2023, the board formed an ad hoc committee for financial sustainability comprised of directors Chapman, Potter, and Annable. That board ad hoc committee met several times in late 2023 and several times in early 2024. And the purpose of that work was to look at long-term sustainable funding for the Open Space Authority and to consider the feasibility of placing a revenue measure on an upcoming ballot and looking at potential funding mechanisms. Coming out of that work of the ad hoc committee, we were taking a close look at feasibility of placing a measure on the November 2024 ballot and looking at a mechanism that included a uniform building per square foot parcel tax. The reason we were looking at November 2024 is that the state legislature has placed a constitutional amendment on the November ballot known as ACA 1. And that constitutional amendment would lower the threshold for local taxes and bonds from 67%, 2/3, down to 50%, 55%, excuse me. That made it very attractive for a government agency like ours. As the board knows, it's very difficult to get 2/3 vote on special taxes. The Open Space Authority's principal interest is in maintaining a flow of funding for operations, maintenance, and management of our growing open space preserve and portfolio of lands. And that's why special taxes, parcel taxes have been an effective way for the Open Space Authority to generate revenue. While we have considered bonds in the past, general obligation bonds, as you well know, are principally focused on land acquisition, capital infrastructure, capital improvements, but not on maintenance. In fact, there's a prohibition on spending those dollars on operations and maintenance. So it was attractive when ACA 1 would include both general obligation bonds and special taxes. In just the last several weeks, there was some statewide polling done, I think, by the housing coalitions that showed support statewide for taxes to be softening, perhaps enough that it could jeopardize the approval of housing bonds including the Bay Area Housing Bond known as BAFA. So, based on that statewide polling, the author, in the legislature, Aguiar Curry, is changing ACA 1 to be now only focused on bonds and not special taxes and bonds. So, staff working with the board's ad hoc committee discussed this a few weeks ago and came to the conclusion that if the constitutional amendment is only going to lower the voting threshold just for bonds, there's not going to be much in there that's going to benefit the Open Space Authority. We've actually have a pretty good track record of attracting grants for land acquisition and capital infrastructure. And again, what's really most needed for us is operations, maintenance, management, stewardship, which is what most park and open space agencies most need. The other factor is that the costs of placing a measure before the voters through the county elections office is significantly increasing. And now the estimated cost to place a measure on the November ballot is $3 million. So we have to be very prudent and cautious about the best time to go to generate the most revenue for the agency and the best chances of that measure passing. So based on that, we've decided to forego a measure on the November ballot, and we'll be working with the board's ad hoc committee to take a close look at the next election cycle, which would be 2026, and looking closely at whether the building per square foot parcel tax still is the one that best meets our needs. Mark, if there's anything you want to add to that? Okay. Happy to answer any questions from the board if you have any.
Okay, look at my colleague, do we have any questions? No? No?
One thing it might be worthwhile just making mention of the builder's remedy. It's also on the ballot.
You mean the business round?
Business roundtable, excuse me.
Roundtable.
I get those two. They're both such good news. Your board took a position, passed a resolution some months back in opposition to an initiative being placed on the November ballot by business organizations called the Business Roundtable Initiative. That's not the official name it will have on the November ballot, but there is concern up and down the state, from the governor's office to the California Special Districts Association, CSAC, leagues of cities, that this proposed initiative, or now it's qualified for the ballot, if passed, would require all government fees and taxes to be placed on a ballot and have a 2/3 vote before it could pass. We're part of a public sector community that's really concerned about that measure and what it could do to undercut government funding for social services and for the kinds of things that we do. That measure, if passed, would also be retroactive to any tax measures that are on that same ballot. So I bring that up because that will be on the ballot in November as well. That Business Roundtable Initiative is being challenged in court, and I don't know if our counsel wants to mention anything about it. It's gone to the California Supreme Court, is being argued there, and a decision is being expected in the next couple of weeks. So the Newsom administration is challenging that perhaps that Business Roundtable measure should not be on the ballot, should be thrown off the ballot. And then in addition, the legislature has placed another Assembly constitutional amendment called ACA 13, which attempts to counter the Business Roundtable Initiative. And what that says is any measure that goes on the ballot that tries to constitutionally change the requirements to require all taxes and fees to have a 2/3 vote must itself be passed by 2/3. So those are two ways that the state of California and local governments are responding to that threat to local government funding. So that's what's coming up in November. We'll be paying close attention to all these things. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I was gonna ask if we had done a resolution. Are we looking for resolutions for AC 13 in the future? Should that be necessary?
Through the chair, Mark Landgraf, Assistant General Manager, I can say that the opposition that was identified in the resolution passed last year to the Business Roundtable measure effectively should do the same thing. But it's a good question. We can ask our consultants if that would be helpful and then forward the resolution, over the summer,
Okay,
if that was the case.
thank you. No, it was the special district meeting that was earlier this month that was talked about, so. Okay. Any questions from anybody? No? Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Wish it was better news. I'm gonna follow the yellow line, so I keep it. Okay, so next item is the report on the status of AB 2682, the Open Space Authority Enabling Act amendments.
Thank you. Good evening, directors. Mark Landgraf, Assistant General Manager. Can you hear me okay? Thank you. Perfect. So tonight I wanted to present changes to the Enabling Act amendments that are being ushered through the legislature as AB 2682, authored by Assemblymember Ash Kalra. So the initial amendments that were approved by your board back in October included these three topics. So land protection in Diablo Range east of Coyote Ridge. And we could do that through fee acquisition from willing sellers. There is a matter about general manager expenditure authority, raising that from 25,000 to 50,000, and then the ability to create community facilities districts. Since that time, and I'll provide details here in just a moment, additional amendments have been added, and that's what I wanted to update you on tonight. So changes to the construction and maintenance contract bidding threshold, and as well adding senior and low income exemptions. So all of this animation in here, I didn't realize was in here, but we'll go through one at a time. It'll work. So originally the what was approved by your board back in October included changing the bidding threshold for all contracts from $25,000 to $50,000. In the process of having this legislation go through the assembly, especially the local government committee, the staff in Assemblymember Kalra's office were contacted by labor representatives having an issue with raising that threshold for construction and maintenance contracts specifically. So because the perception would be that with a higher threshold and not having to go out to bid for those contracts, that there'd be less competition among companies for those contracts. So through discussions with Assemblymember Kalra's staff, our consultants at the Pacific Policy Group, Authority Legal Counsel, we came up with a solution that bifurcated those types of contracts, the construction and maintenance contracts, from the other types of contracts. Primarily service contracts fall into that category, but also equipment and supply contracts. So anything really other than construction and maintenance. So the proposal was to keep construction and maintenance contracts at $25,000 for that bidding threshold. And then other contracts would go to 50,000 as previously anticipated. And that proposal was accepted by the labor representatives. So that's what went forward through the local government committee and on the assembly floor. And so with that, there has been no opposition to the legislation and things are moving forward. I did want to note that board approval, as was originally suggested by your guidance back in October, board approval required for anything above $50,000, regardless of the type of contract it is. So this chart shows the different situations, different types of contracts. It's a little bit of an eye chart. You don't have to memorize it or anything, but it is helpful as we're going through the details of a certain type of contract to know where the different thresholds are. So we put that up there for clarity for anyone getting into those details. So before I move on to the second issue, any questions on this portion?
So just, you may have said this, but this is with inflation, this is where a lot of districts are going in special districts and local governments, right?
I'm going to higher bidding thresholds. That's correct. All right, then the other area in which we made changes to the legislation was as we were going through the process of exploring different funding measure options, as the general manager explained in the previous item, a suggestion was made to add to our Enabling Act amendments the ability to, if we chose, to add senior and low income exemptions to whatever tax we levied. Right now, the uniformity clause within our Enabling Act prevents us from doing that, but with change to the Enabling Act, we could include those exemptions. And so the three exemptions you see here are taken exactly from school district funding measure or legislation that is in statute. And because that went smoothly through the legislature in previous rounds where this was considered, we felt that had the best chance of being successful for our legislation as well. We would get fewer questions. It's a straightforward process, and it seems to be working for school districts and other districts that employ these kinds of exemptions. And so those changes also are present in the current language that's in print. And the legislation made it through the assembly floor, as I mentioned, and is now facing the Senate Local Government Committee on June 26th, and we'll be there to testify for that. But still no opposition has been lodged. And so with that, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair, if there are any further questions.
Thank you, Mark, for the update. Any questions from my colleagues? No? No? Okay,
Thank you very much.
glad it's going smoothly. Okay, and was there any public comment on this item? It is an information item, no action.
There is no comments.
All right, now we are on reorder item number 2, public hearing and presentation of the proposed fiscal year 2024-2025 budget, annual work plan, and position statement.
Okay. Good evening, directors. Justina Teen, Fiscal Services Officer. And tonight we are presenting the budget and annual work plan for fiscal year 2024-2025. And so before we start, we'd like to provide a quick rundown of tonight's presentation. After this slide, I will turn it over to our general manager for an introduction. Then staff would discuss some of the new tools and processes that we've utilized for this upcoming fiscal year's development. before turning it over to the rest of the management team to present the work plan projects and programmatic priorities. We can opt for a short break after the department presentations, so that when we come back, everyone will be ready to digest some numbers and review the budget. And then, so with that, I'll turn it over to Andrea.
Okay, I'm just gonna stay here and maybe ask you just to advance the slides. We'll start with this one here first. Thank you, Justina. Good evening, board members. I'd like to provide some introductory remarks and context for the 2024-2025 budget and work plan. And then, as Justina said, we'll turn the presentation over to staff to walk you through the departmental priorities for the coming fiscal year. I'd like to just first start by saying how proud we are of what this efficient and effective mission-driven agency has been able to accomplish for nature and people in the Santa Clara Valley in our first 30 years. And our work is not yet finished. Much more remains to be done. After all, we are, as former Secretary of the Interior, Sally Jewell, has said, in the business of forever. We know nature is not a nice to have, it's an essential element of our life support system and our community's quality of life. Next slide, please. In 2011, when I began working for the authority, the amount of open space the agency had protected and was responsible for managing was about 12,000 acres. Today, the acreage of open space lands we've acquired and are responsible for managing in perpetuity has increased to about 30,000 acres and almost tripling of acreage in 13 years. And we will see this increase even more, potentially as much as 5,000 acres in just the next several years. And all of this land acquisition and land management is happening in one of the most expensive places in the country to acquire, operate, and maintain public lands. Next slide. So as your board knows, the Open Space Authority's revenues are principally derived from District 1, which is a $12 annual benefit assessment, and also from a voter-approved annual parcel tax of $24 known as Measure Q, which was approved in 2014 and extended by voters as Measure T in 2020 with no increase. So you can see this here. Keep in mind this previous slide, you saw the growing tripling of open space acreage, and the green line shows the flat revenue we receive. And the blue shows our increasing expenditures to take care of those lands that we've acquired and are managing. And unlike our sister agencies that have revenue streams such as property tax and sales tax that can generate increased revenue over time, our revenue streams have remained flat and have not and will not increase, even as the acreage we're responsible for in perpetuity has significantly increased. We have no COLA, no way to accelerate that flat green line in the measures that we've secured from the voters to date. Next slide. So these are challenging fiscal times, as you all know, for government agencies in a post-COVID-19 era and a shifting economic environment. We're reading the news every day. We know that there are some economic indicators that are showing improvement, but we're still taking a very prudent approach to budgeting and spending in fiscal year 24-25. And we're recommending an overall budget that is significantly lower than 23-24, principally by deferring large capital projects for at least a year or two, and prioritizing those projects that have significant outside funding from federal and state grant programs and foundations, and also reducing our operational spending by leaving a number of staff vacancies unfilled. We continue to build on our successful track record of successfully leveraging our modest local tax revenues of $12 million a year to attract significant outside funding. And principally, the federal and state grant monies and other partnership contributions we've been able to secure gives us a ratio of about 1 to 3. So for every dollar of local tax revenues we generate, we bring in about $3 in outside funding. We're talking about land acquisition, it's $4 for every dollar that we spend. And we think that's important to local voters and the public to see how careful we spend our money. We'll be continuing this coming fiscal year to focus on providing excellent visitor experiences at our open space preserve, providing well-managed and stewarded open space lands, trails, water resources, wildlife habitat, and public access facilities. As we talked about a little bit earlier this evening, even with our track record of managing our money and successfully attracting outside funding to augment our modest tax revenues, we'll need additional funding in the next several years beyond our current base tax revenues to maintain and sustain our current level of operations for our open space preserve, to develop open space facilities and amenities on newly acquired lands, and to protect, restore, and care for our system of natural and working lands. And this is so important to be able to respond to climate change, ensure we have healthy lands surrounding our communities, and to meet the growing demand for public access to nature as our cities become more dense. So in a moment, staff is going to discuss the 3-year capital improvement plan and a 9-year revenue and expenditure forecast. And these are tools that we've worked very hard on to inform the 24-25 budget. And it includes financial projections for revenue and expenditures in the coming decade, where we've evaluated financial scenarios, we've prioritized capital projects and programs, and we've projected the level of supplemental funding that will be needed. And we've been working very closely with the board's ad hoc committee on this work as well. So with that as background, I'm going to turn it back to Justina.
Thank
Thanks.
you. So as Andrea had mentioned, staff created 2 tools at the beginning of the budget and work plan development process. And we'll continue to refine them and update them and continue to use them in our process moving forward. But, in hopes that it'll best inform the impact of today's fiscal decisions on the future sustainability of our funds. There will be 2 of us presenting regarding the 2 tools. Megan Drager, Conservation and Strategic Partnerships Manager, spearheaded the 3-year CIP tool. And right after this, I'll do a quick pivot to kind of ask her to provide an example of the CIP, a capital improvement plan, and what the information we put into that tool. And I'll go over the 9-year forecast. And it's, give a very high level overview of the assumptions that were made, the type of expenses that we tracked, knowing where the impacts were large, where they mostly were at. And then finally, we'll turn it over to Lee. She'll discuss the areas that we dove deep into to find ways to leverage outside funding and prioritize the most important urgent work so that we can intentionally deliver projects in a conservative, fiscally responsible manner. And so the first one up would be the CIP tool.
Good evening, directors. Capital projects are one of the largest investments that we make. And for us, that includes land acquisition, habitat restoration, and our public access projects. These are generational investments that the authority is making, and it takes forethought and planning. So this year, as has been mentioned, we created our first formal capital improvement plan, or CIP, to help map out our projects over the coming years. So a CIP considers all capital projects, so it gives another number of benefits listed on the slide, but essentially lets us see the big picture, compare all the projects at once, and plan ahead for funding and staffing. We'll walk through just a quick example. This is a hypothetical project, but just to show the kind of additional data that this gives us. So in this example, there's a chart and the numbers below for a fictitious project that costs $1.5 million. So both the numbers and of course on the chart, you can see that while the project is 1.5 million, which often when we're presenting to the board, we might talk about a project total. But really, when you're looking at the project year by year, there are distinct differences in how much it costs in any given year. And in a typical construction project, for example, this is a 3-year project. Years 1 and 2 are scoping, planning, design, and year 3 is when construction happens. And you can see by far that's the most expensive part of the project. So that's something that for us to plan ahead, it really helps to know when we're gonna have that bigger hit, when we need to spend additional funds. The construction phase of a project is also when we're the most likely to get grant funding for it. So it also helps us time our grant applications and know when we're gonna need that funding in place in time for that 3rd year where we would need to spend $1 million. Again, continuing our fictitious example, in this case, this same project was awarded a $1.2 million grant. I think it was 1.2, I don't have my glasses on. But just to show in theory here, the yellow continues the OSA funds, the grant is in blue, so it's a $1.5 million project, but the OSA is really only putting in $300,000. So that's of course good, as Andrea has been mentioning, we are really focused on leveraging our funds. But the CIP is still important, even if we're bringing in a lot of grant money, because most grants are on a reimbursement basis. So again, in that year 3, when we need to spend $1 million on construction, we have to front the funds with authority funding and then get reimbursed. And often that reimbursement doesn't necessarily happen in the same fiscal year. So we just need to plan carefully to make sure that we have that money for those projects.
Thank you. And so that's where I come in. So the purpose of the forecast was to kind of help staff look further ahead than just 1 to 2 years. And basically see where the choices that we make, the projects that we commit to, how would that affect our funds much later down the line? Now, a forecast isn't meant to count down to the pennies, but there's a level of confidence to its accuracy. And while it's subject to change, it doesn't mean that it's projected without merit. We use past historical trends, and then we also kind of incorporate a best straight line inflator to estimate future major expenditures, such as salaries and benefits, non-discretionary operating expenses, program operating expenses, election costs, urban grant program allocations, and of course, the capital projects. The CIP and the 9-year forecast documents were basically used hand in hand with the timing, kind of looking at when grant reimbursements might come in, where we have to pay out. We get to kind of see that flow of the cash, and plugging in that data, we got to see the impact of the timing of the spending. And then staff could then reassess whether the projects need to slow down, when to pick up, to kind of evenly pace our spending over the years, and ensure that we don't withdraw our fund balances. And then with that, I'll turn it over to Lee.
Thank you, Justina. Good evening, Directors. Lee Rauscher, Assistant General Manager. As you could probably tell from the descriptions of these 2 new tools, the 3-year CIP and the 9-year forecast were very helpful to the team to better understand the impacts of committing to different combinations of projects, the scope and scale, the timelines, and different programmatic work across the agency. Equally as important, it also helped us bring in new points of view and areas of expertise by involving more staff across the agency to contribute to these models. So early in the budget process, the general manager set parameters for staffing in the upcoming year. The first step to managing our salaries and benefit expenses was to declare there would be no newly created positions added to the budget. We also received direction that only selected vacancies would be filled, as Andrea mentioned earlier, leaving 3 positions open in the upcoming fiscal year that will be reevaluated in the forthcoming fiscal year 25-26. Lastly, it was decided not to backfill behind some of the folks who were recently promoted. With Matt Freeman's departure, these folks were promoted to help retain and bring forward their institutional knowledge, of course, grow with the agency, and bring their expertise to the forefront. And Elizabeth will go into more detail about staffing in just a little bit, but that's a little view into how we were able to save some money in the staffing area. Next, after an initial draft of the budget was created, and again, at the GM's direction, we took an even harder look at our expenses. And we took the following steps to cut about $1 million from our budget. The agency will push out expenses that can wait, reduce expenses that do not impact the delivery of our mission, and focus only on the most important and urgent projects and program deliverables for the fiscal year. We prioritize projects and programmatic work that we've secured outside funding for. These not, we're not talking about speculative grants. These are things that Megan and her team have secured for the agency. And bears repeating, you've heard it a couple times, but it's impressive. And I want to say it one more time that we do leverage our money very, very well. Approximately $3 of outside funding for every one OSA dollar, and up to $4 of outside funding for acquisition projects. Justina's going to show you the impact of that leveraged outside funding near the very end of the presentation. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then as a result of this rigorous analysis and planning, cutting costs where we could and leveraging outside funding, tonight we're presenting the board with I love this number, $18,776,984, I should say. This is an 18% reduction from fiscal year 23-24, which is our current fiscal year, and 24% smaller than the year before that, fiscal year 22-23. So Justina's going to walk you through all these numbers in detail in just a little bit. But first, I'm going to pass it over to Mark as we're going to pivot to the work plan. He's going to orient you to our new structure.
Good evening, directors. Mark Landgraf, Assistant General Manager. Thank you, Lee. So we're gonna transition to talking about the work plan, the different priorities represented within the work plan, and each of the managers present here tonight will walk you through their respective departments. We wanted to start with a functional org chart here to get you oriented, as Lee mentioned, to the revised structure that the general manager introduced you to earlier this year. And so at the top, general manager, and then you see two divisions, administrative and field operations is the first division, and then the second is conservation planning and communication. And then within the divisions are different departments. So within the first division, administrative operations, field operations, natural resources. Within each of those departments, then are various program areas, and that's what the managers are going to walk you through one at a time. And then similar for the second division, you also see divided into departments and programs. And so that's currently how our organization is structured. So without further ado, then I would pass it off to Elizabeth for administrative operations.
Good evening, directors. Elizabeth Loretto, Administrative Operations Manager. The Administrative Operations Department is responsible for the management of necessary operational services for the optimal functioning of the agency. We do this through the programs you see listed here on the screen. Through each of these programs, the department is focused on providing support to staff that is collaborative and identifies what is possible. The department plays a key role in achieving organization-wide operational efficiencies through cross-departmental collaboration and continuous improvement, ensuring stability and sustainability for the agency. So in fiscal year 24-25, the department has a couple of priorities. We're focused on advancing projects to identify new software solutions to improve existing programs for ease of use and improve collaboration across all departments. Specifically, we'll be continuing a project to complete file management restructuring across the agency, specifically implementing SharePoint across the whole agency, as well as evaluating asset management and maintenance software that will be especially supportive for field operations and all of their kind of creating a ticketing system for what goes on in the field. On the programmatic level, the department will focus on implementing new training and development programs for staff and board. This includes a new model for how staff identify and access their development resources and training, and a new strengths-based coaching program for program managers and department managers. And or just earlier this evening, also through the Administration and Budget Committee, you heard a little bit about plans for some new board training approaches that support this as well. And we'll continue focusing on workplace culture and systems to support innovation and collaboration for all staff. And with that, I forget who I sent it to. Back to Mark.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I am back again, but representing in this case the Communications and Media Program on behalf of Charlotte Grant, who couldn't be here this evening. So the primary goal of the Communications and Media Program is to strategically establish connections between the Open Space Authority and its diverse audience, fostering awareness of the authority's achievements and the importance of nature in people's lives. Through crafting and delivering the authority's message to the community, the program continuously refines and expands its outreach efforts across various communication platforms. These platforms include digital media such as our newsletter, blog, social media platforms, as well as our website. Zooming in on the social media platforms the Open Space Authority uses, these include Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Nextdoor. One change as we look ahead to the upcoming fiscal year is that the communications team has made the decision to discontinue the use of X, formerly known as Twitter, due to recent policy changes that conflict with our agency's core values. I needn't say more. Additionally, this platform no longer represents a significant audience for our outreach efforts, so we will be focusing our resources to the other platforms mentioned previously. Furthermore, the communications team is excited to announce the upcoming launch of our brand new website, openspaceauthority.org. That'll happen later this calendar year. Our website serves as a crucial communication tool for the authority and will be completely rebuilt to provide an even better user experience. Please stay tuned for the unveiling of the improved site in the first half of the new fiscal year. Presented here are the various themes and messages that our communications department focuses on in our outreach efforts. These include promoting investments in nature-based solutions for combating climate change, highlighting the numerous benefits that nature offers to both people and wildlife, providing opportunities for people to connect with nature through open space preserves, events, and educational programs, emphasizing that nature is for everyone and everyone deserves access to open space, underscoring the importance of a thriving local agricultural economy for food security, and fostering connections between people and the diverse communities of people, places, and wildlife of the Santa Clara Valley. In addition to the use of the digital media platforms mentioned earlier, the communications team gets these messages out using printed collateral, traditional and ethnic media outreach, advertising, special events, and signage. And with that, I will pass it on to Megan Drager.
Good evening again. The Conservation and Strategic Partnerships is a brand new department created during the reorg that was referred to earlier. We are a team of 5 that work on several interrelated programs, everything from land protection, all of the intergovernmental relations, as well as funding, strategic partnerships, and so on. And I can say too, this is a lot of sort of disparate things that we do, but we're finding a lot of synergy having us in one department. There's a lot of overlap between each of these things. So we're enjoying doing together. In terms of looking ahead for this year, in fiscal year 24-25, we will be moving forward on some major land acquisitions. That includes both the 850 acres in Coyote Valley that will be transferring from Post to the Open Space Authority. At Tilton Ranch, we'll complete the conservation easement and trail rights to the Open Space Authority for enrollment in the Habitat Reserve System. And we'll be evaluating opportunities to increase land access to farmers, including looking at what's called a buy, protect, sell option for authority-held agricultural lands. We'll also be offering our next urban grant program solicitation. And we'll be continuing to build and maintain relationships with elected officials, the business sector, and other partners. And this kind of partnership umbrella, there are a lot of different things inside of that we do. This covers everything from close partnerships with folks like Post that we work with a lot on land acquisitions, as well as groups that we work with on more specific things like the Santa Clara County Youth Climate Initiative. Other partner work, working with Post and our tribal partners, as well as others, we will be developing a conservation strategy for the Upper Pajaro River watershed. And we'll be engaging in the Santa Clara County's Climate Collaborative and working with partners in the business sector to increase investment in nature-based strategies. And finally, as always, we'll be exploring external funding opportunities. Some of the things we'll be looking for in particular in the short term is funding for Rancho Cañada del Oro's Backcountry Trails project, which Lucas will be talking about in a few minutes, as well as things like wildlife crossing infrastructure and other Coyote Valley projects that we have.
Good evening, directors. I have the next part of this, which is field operations. We have 3 programs within that area. In each one of the 3 program areas in the preserve and field operations, our staff are providing a safe and equitable access for visitors to our preserves while maintaining visitor access facilities such as staging area and trails. And they're also responsible for the day-to-day stewardship on authority lands. In our volunteer engagement side of our department, they're leading volunteer staff on a multitude of projects, providing opportunities for local community members to engage in natural resource and visitor access projects, and coordination of volunteer staff to support field operations and natural resource work requirements. In our environmental education program, our staff are creating and delivery of nature and science-based educational experiences, docent recruitment and training, and coordinating educational programming with other land protection agencies. One thing I'd like to note here is our partnership with both the Natural Resources Department in Planning, Design, and Construction Department. And together we support one another as well as rely upon the staff from all 3 departments to work on a multitude of on-the-ground projects. It truly takes a village to provide access while preserving both the natural lands and working lands that we have. Next slide. For our main work focus for this coming up year in Mayana Yakima, we had a very successful first year. During this past year, during this next year, we will be looking at staff and volunteer feedback, as well as data gathered on visitor usage and impacts on natural resources within the preserve and adjusting our operations as needed. We'll also be maintaining a high-touch visitor use services at all of our preserves. In this upcoming year, our goal is to keep our best of the area reputation intact by continuing to provide exceptional visitor service experience and maintenance of visitor access facilities. We'll also be looking at this year in setting the foundation of a future maintenance management system. This system, once implemented, will allow for a greater response while reducing administrative costs and needs. In this coming year, we will be ensuring that the data for the system is collected, vetted, and ready to upload, as well as creating a plan for implementation. We expect that system to be coming online in a future fiscal year, 25-26, or a little bit beyond. This is the year we're getting it all ready. Preparing for emergencies. As in other years, our focus will be in preparing the preserves and staff for potential emergencies, from wildland fires to visitor health. Visitor use facilities. At Rancho, we'll be folding in the new Hidden Meadow day use area that we just had a ribbon cutting on. This area is expected to see a substantial amount of use due to its ease of access and its ability to give the impression of truly being in the wilderness after a short stroll in the Llagas Loop. This is the first step in providing even more public access in the southern part of Rancho. We'll also be looking at building new family-friendly programming. Our environmental education program will be pivoting in this coming year to look at the expansion of our family-friendly programming. Coming off the success of our evening campfire programs, we'll be looking at other opportunities to bring families of all backgrounds out into the natural lands where they can experience nature at its best, all while building a family connection to the land. This coming year will also have us reaching deeper into our communities, evaluating our current booth outreach series with new opportunities. Look for us to reach new areas of our jurisdiction coming up this year. And as I mentioned earlier, our partnership with Natural Resources in planning, design, and construction will only deepen this year as we continue to work collaboratively on various projects. We are only starting to hit our stride working together. There are great things to come from this partnership as we work together to create new visitor opportunities at Coyote Valley, fold in the Tilton Ranch property into our managed lands, and start the process for public access. And with that, I will turn it over to Long Range Planning and Nick.
The largest department to the smallest department. Good evening, directors. Nick Perry, Long Range Planning Manager of your new Long Range Planning Department, currently a department of 1, but soon to be 2 as Jennifer Peth moves over and joins me in Long Range Planning, and we bring a new planner onto Lucas's department. So long-range planning is focused on three main programs. We collaborate and work closely with other departments and agencies on strategic preserve planning for both future and existing preserves. And our main focus right now and for the next few years will be on the Coyote Valley Conservation Areas Master Plan, which you may have all heard of a little bit about. And we also do a lot of regional planning coordination, working closely with county parks, the city of San Jose, Peninsula Open Space Trust, and other regional planning projects in the area. So this coming fiscal year, our main focuses will be on completing the preliminary visioning and conceptual alternatives phases of the Coyote Valley Conservation Areas Master Plan, including robust community engagement associated with those phases. And also continuing ongoing coordination with our other partners and their in-progress long-range planning efforts, such as the Countywide Trails Master Plan, the City of San Jose's Coyote Corridor Study, and a post-Coyote Valley Wildlife Connectivity Planning Project. So one person, and my department is now done. I'm passing it over to Aaron.
Right over here, buddy. Aaron Aber, Natural Resources Manager. We have a couple of programs in this department. Community restoration, that's really sort of project-based restoration where we're restoring ecological communities, and often we're working with human communities. So bringing out school groups, engaging the public, trying to get volunteer opportunities. And then, habitat stewardship is another program we have that's really about maintaining those 30,000 acres that Andrea was talking about. Is really all the annual work, invasive plant management, fuels management, just everything that goes into taking care of a preserve is really our habitat stewardship program. And then our newest program, which we're hiring for in this upcoming fiscal year, is our agricultural program. So increasingly, that's more of my time, and hopefully that'll be someone's full-time gig in the coming year. So, like Derek's team, we have a responsibility to take care of the land, and that's a big part of our job. And we do sort of bigger project type work as well. And each year is kind of a blend of those two things. So on our list, which is maybe a little long, but reflects, I think, all the exciting stuff we have going on. Sometime probably in the next 6 months or so, I'll bring to you a sort of prioritized plan for what we're doing here at Natural Resources. As the board may recall, I was hired about a little less than 2 years ago, and now that I've got my feet under me, hopefully. Both the work that we need to do within OSA and how we interface with this constellation of land managers and agencies around us. That's the work I've been doing. So just kind of doing a deep dive in natural resources, kind of where we're going. So that'll be exciting. And it is no surprise to the board. Pigs are a big issue. We've talked about that. So you'll see that reflected in the budget. That's probably the biggest change in our department's budget, I would say, in a general sense. Supporting Nick and CD Camp and all the restoration work there is a big part of the department's time in general, and not just the planning, but sort of getting towards more implementation type actions. And a good example of that is the Stepping Stone project in North Laguna Seca. Hopefully we'll bring something to the board that gives you more detail, but that's an exciting, cost-effective restoration project that will bring back habitat and water to North Laguna Seca, without actually doing that much on the ground. So that's just a teaser, but more to come on that. Delivering habitat management work on grazing, invasive species, and fuels management. And again, that's that programmatic work we do every year. It happens in different preserves at different levels each year, but it's always there. Starting the agricultural program is a big milestone, I think, in terms of taking care of our land and working with our tenants and kind of charting that future with the board. I hope when that person's up and running and they're able to talk the talk a little bit, that they can engage the board and what you see as the vision for agriculture at this agency. Another big priority is being successful at Miami Yakima. The board is well aware of our really great butterfly pass system, and hopefully you'll be getting an update on that later in the summer or the fall. But doing that right and doing right by the land is a big deal. So dedicating staff resources and efforts to making sure we're successful there, so we have a great public access experience. And then another project the board is aware of is some of our restoration work at the Pajaro River Agricultural Preserve, done in partnership with the Valley Habitat Agency. So we're moving that along, doing good things by that creek, and hopefully for the downstream communities in that area. So those are the big ones for this next fiscal year.
Good evening, Directors. Lucas Shellhammer, Planning, Design, and Construction Manager. The Planning, Design, and Construction Department connects people to nature through the implementation of major projects to improve and maintain functional, safe, and ecologically sensitive infrastructure in support of land stewardship and the authority's mission, including supporting and maintaining the authority's Geographic Information System, or GIS, to facilitate the management of authority lands and physical assets to support planning, as well as ongoing operations and management. There are three departments or three programs within the Planning, Design, and Construction Department. The first is the Capital Planning Program, which includes manages feasibility assessments for near and midterm capital projects and supports other departments in early planning and conceptual design phases, and advises on the development of the authority's multi-year capital plan that Megan was talking about earlier. The second program is the Design and Construction Department, which leads the development of construction documentation and implementation for major construction projects, and ensures the authority's compliance with current regulations and construction standards. And the third is Cartography and Geographic Analysis Program, which includes our GIS program, and which is the cartography, which provides mapping and analysis services to support all aspects of authority work, including conservation planning, natural resource and land management, capital infrastructure projects, real property evaluations, acquisitions, community and media outreach. Next slide. So this fiscal year, a lot of the projects that we are working on touch on some of the things that Lee was mentioning earlier, prioritizing those projects that are funded by grants, as well as lining us up for future grant funding, working with our partnerships, and of course, capitalizing on building upon our mission and the projects we have in and around Coyote Valley. So the first is using our $1 million in grant funding between the Valley Water Grant and the recent federal funding that we received to increase our portfolio of accessible spaces. And so that would be at the Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve. So this year we'll be working on kind of the final documentation of construction documents and permitting, as well as NEPA, which is a requirement of that federal grant, to get that project ready to begin construction as early as next summer. The second is the Rancho Piñata Del Oro Open Space Preserve Backcountry Trails project. So building upon our recent successes, dedication of Bay Area Ridge Trail route through that area, and soon to come regional trail route through the county of Santa Clara. Trails Master Plan update, beginning public outreach, inventories, and analysis for that project. The Tilton Ranch Complex will be getting some preliminary assessments to evaluate historic, cultural resources and biological resources on that property, and begin some initial internal discussions to help inform future planning at the property. The El Toro Public Access will be working with the City of Morgan Hill on an agreement for developing future staging areas, which will be announced sometime later this summer, we plan. So early planning analysis. And then the authority outlets and natural resource GIS monitoring tools are in support of the Natural Resources Department and Field Department, migrating some of our paper tools that we have to digital resources, and developing tools for us to do in-field mapping that we can take back and build upon later. That's the Atlas project, inventorying, mapping our physical access on the preserve, verifying where we have roads and trails and gates and all those nitty-gritty things so that we can manage them better in the future. And I will leave it at that.
Thank you. Now we have an option. Would we like to opt for a break or continue?
Okay. Take a 30-second stretch.
Sure. Okay, let's bring it back and let's continue. Okay. So, thank you. So let's get down to some numbers, but first I'll oops, where's my mouse? Kind of provide a quick overview. So as previously mentioned, the authority has two main revenue streams. District 1, it's a benefit assessment that the board approves to levy each fiscal year. It's a $12 per parcel. It brings in approximately 4.2 million and is used to cover the type of expenses that it funds includes salaries, non-discretionary costs, election costs, capital purchases, mitigation services, as well as just maintenance of land management and operations. And then the other revenue source is Measure T, which succeeded a Measure Q. It's a parcel tax. It brings in about 8 million a year, and it can pay for expenditures outlined in the expenditure plan, and namely in 4 categories. The first category being around involving land protection. Second one around water resources. Third one is stewardship and environmental education. And then the fourth category would be the grant program. And then we have our reserve fund, which we break out into the operational reserve and capital reserve. And we also have a kind of third segment that we set aside. But the unrestricted reserve fund was created following the resolution of a lawsuit over District 2. The board has a reserve fund policy in 2013 that was approved. It committed 14 million into the operational reserve as a rainy day fund. The remaining balance at the time was then considered the capital reserve fund, which would pay for capital improvements and purchases as well as acquisitions. And in 2017, we had set aside additional money for stewardship that was kind of set as a standard set by LTA, the Land Trust Alliance. And then lastly, we have another fund that we track, and that's our grants fund. As Megan Dreger had mentioned, a lot of our funds are actually reimbursement based, where we spend first and then we would claim reimbursement. There are some cases where grants are paid out to us upfront, but we do have to hold that money separate. We can't commingle it with our own funds, and so that's why we manage. And it's restricted. It's set aside, and it's only for the specific project and the budgets that were approved. And then so those are our 4 major ones. With Measure Q, kind of we still have some money left over, which I'll talk about, but we don't have money coming in anymore. But kind of going into the projected fund balances. So each year, when we don't spend 100% of the revenues that we receive, we retain that surplus and we bank it into each fund's carryover balance. So think of the carryover as kind of like the balance we've saved up over the years. In District 1, as of June 30th, 2024, so that's the end of this current fiscal year, we project that we'll have about 9.2 million as our ending balance, but about 2 million of that is actually committed to the 20% funding program, which is created through the 5-year plan. And allocations to the program is calculated from a formula. And for the past 3 fiscal years, we haven't been able to add to this balance, which was foreseen because as our operating expenditures continue to grow, as we acquire more land and consume more of the revenues, there wouldn't be much left to allocate to the 20% funding program. But that would leave available balance of about 7.2 of a carryover for our own agency use for projects and expenditures. And for Measure Q, by the end of the fiscal year, we project to have about 6.9 million in carryover, and 500,000 of that balance is committed to a project, and that leaves a agency about 6.4 million available. And in Measure T, we do project a 6.7 million in carryover, And then in reserve, as mentioned, we have about 15.8 million. 14 million set aside as that rainy day fund of the operational reserve. The 300,000 is the conservation stewardship fund that we set aside per LTA recommendation. And that would leave us with the 1.56 million, which it's considered the capital reserve that we could tap into for acquisitions and capital purchases. And then so a main reason why we kind of wanted to provide that review of the carryover balances is to remind the board that as we acquire and manage more land, our operating expenditures continue to grow, but our revenues remain flat. So over the past 5 years, our non-discretionary expenses were still well below our revenue amounts. So it left money for projects, acquisitions, and capital improvements, and then we augment with outside funding. But as non-discretionary expenses continue to consume most of the revenues, the agency is going to have to utilize that carryover in the previous slide that we banked from previous fiscal years to kind of pay for projects. And so in the upcoming fiscal year, we expect to receive about 12.4 million in assessment revenue and parcel tax revenues. We'll also get reimbursed for land management services, and we receive agricultural lease revenues as well. So that would be that 12.9. We intend to withdraw 4.6 from carryover to fund projects and acquisitions for next year. And then we also have secured grants that we would utilize to, and we expect to spend, as well as some interest income, some grazing income, with a total of 19.2 as our estimated income for next year. So then next is a breakdown of the proposed budget by major expense category. Kind of going down the line, payroll and benefits, a little bit self-explanatory. So our salaries for staff. Benefits include health benefits such as medical, dental, and vision. It includes the employer taxes and CalPERS. And then travel and expenses include mileage reimbursements, as well as an allowance for typical business-related travel. And supplies and consumables include supplies for the office, as well as out in the field. Includes examples such as postage and printing, safety supplies and uniforms, fuel itself for the fleet, as well as just consumables like tools, not tools, but like nuts and bolts, anything that might need for fencing, like lumber, and posts for gates. So basic materials that field staff would use out in our preserves. Outside services, some examples that outside services actually contain several subcategories, like accounting and finance services, such as paying the auditors, the investment advisor, paying legal counsel. We also have IT services, communications related content and design services, media. Translations is a new category that we've started tracking, as well as resource management services like site monitoring and habitat restoration costs. And then for planning services, we have this design, the actual construction cost itself. All those type of expenses will fall under that category. Other services and expenses, this is where the board will find the budget for business insurances, fees that we pay banks, fees that we have to pay for permits, escrow fees, wire fees, as well as we capture our environmental education program and volunteer program costs within that category, as well as recruitment costs. The equipment and maintenance category, some examples of expenses there include the shop and field equipment, even field equipment rentals that we might need for projects, computer equipment and software, as well as purchase of any vehicles and the maintenance costs of our current existing fleet as well. And then the next category, facilities and utilities, the budget includes items such as janitorial, landscaping, alarm services, and utilities like cellular, water, gas, and garbage. The last three, kind of wrapping up, memberships and sponsorships include, the fees for being part of CSDA, California Special District Association. Or perhaps for staff, a professional membership, such as myself being part of the Government Financial Officers Association. For continuing education, staying on, up to date with GASB rules, for example. So across the agency, different professionals, we might have some membership for that. And then the acquisition itself is the estimated budget, proposed budget for potential acquisition of fee title or easements. And then lastly, the allocation for the grant program is the last budget category. And so the total budget that we are seeking and proposing for fiscal year 2024, 2025 would be the 18,776,984. Take a quick pause. Any questions before I move on to the kind of a breakout of that budget?
Any questions?
Because I know it's a lot of numbers. Okay.
So big. Used to be small.
It decreased this year, so.
I mean. 15 years.
Yes. But our acreage also compared to 50 years ago. So then actually kind of going off the last category, the urban grant allocations, I kind of wanted to kind of give an overview of what that budget number is for. And so one of the subset of the money that accounting keeps track of are the allocations and disbursements of the grants awarded under this program. And as part of the budget each year, the board approves the annual allocation to the program. So that's that $100,000 that the board saw in the previous slide. That money is set aside specifically for the grant program, and it's not to be used for our own projects. And it generally takes about 2 to 3 years of kind of building up, 2 or 3 budget years to kind of build up that money to actually offer a solicitation. So then kind of like that little piggy bank, the first part, every year, what the number you see in the budget is the allocation. And then after a few years, that would be where the grants team would come and provide a number, and that is what is available to offer for solicitation. And then so as of June 30th, 2024, what we estimate having available, like what's been saved up, is about 1.2 million. What we plan to offer could be a totally different number. So just kind of putting it out there. Then after the award, accounting also keeps track, along with the grants team, the requests we will reimburse over, depending on the grant, it could be up to a period of like 3 years. And so as the project progresses, the grantee would request reimbursement, and we would then actually pay out over time. Any questions about how that flow of money goes? And then from there, that was the last line of the budget category. I'll pop it back up to the top line and hand it over to Elizabeth to talk about salaries.
Thank you, Justina. Hello again, board. In the fiscal year 24-25, as Justina mentioned, we are looking at a net decrease of just over $375,000 for our payroll and benefits expenses. There are 3 main factors that impact this line item. The primary contributor is that strategic choice you've been hearing about to leave some positions vacant in the coming fiscal year. Specifically, the positions that are identified as remaining vacant will be the deputy clerk of the board, one of the senior open space planner positions, and an open space technician 2 position. We will be, an additional note though, is that we will be increasing the staff accountant position from 3/4 time to full-time. To handle this scale of all of these dollars we're talking about here, it's time that that position grows a little bit. For a little context, we do currently have, well, As of today, we have an accepted offer from somebody for one of our vacancies, so we'll have a new communications coordinator coming on soon, which leaves us with 12 remaining vacancies. 9 of those will be filled between now and the fall. The second element that contributes to the salaries and benefits portion of our budget is that cost of living adjustment applied to wages. As a reminder, the authority historically recommends the cost of living adjustment based on the March report of the Consumer Price Index for the San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose region for the year ending in February. This year, staff is following that model and is recommending a cost of living adjustment of 2.4%. Which reflects that data available to us in March of 2024. We have done just a quick comparative research looking around, as always, at our peer agencies. At this time, they're all pre-agreed to COLAs through collective bargaining agreements, ranging either 3% or 4%. And then tracking the trend of our historical COLA, we have found that the average of what has been implemented in the previous 9 budget cycles is at 3.32%. And if we move forward with this 2.4% cost of living adjustment for fiscal year 24-25, the average would adjust to 3.23%. And then the third factor contributing to this line item is our benefits. This year, we do see some adjustments to primarily our health benefit offerings, where Kaiser has an increase of 11.9% effective July 1, and our health net plan has an increase of 7%. To those monthly premiums that we pay. And with that, I'll hand it back to Justina.
Thank you. Okay. So if the budget is approved as proposed by staff, kind of revisiting the projected fund balances of each major fund, kind of looking forward, seeing the impact by the end of the next fiscal year, which is June 30th, 2025, how would that kind of look to our for our funds? In District 1, we would estimate seeing leaving a balance of about 5.8. Similarly with Measure Q, Measure T, and Reserve. Again, it leaves us with a fairly healthy balance that we could continue to kind of withdraw from as needed. But that is kind of what we would foresee. It kind of lends ourselves, again, that 9-year forecast, kind of being able to see in the future of the impacts of what would happen for this fiscal year, how would it look for, for the next year. So how do we compare with the this current year's approved budget? So as Elizabeth had mentioned, she described the changes to the salaries and benefits. In terms of the departmental operating expenses, we had found reductions across the board. Some areas highlighted where travel expenses were reduced by over 75% from the current year. Outside consultancy was reduced by a little under 39%. A lot of it was contributed to a lower construction budget, with 2 major capital improvement projects having one being wrapped up, one already wrapped up, and one being wrapped up soon in this fiscal year. So not having to carry over and in deferring other capital projects. Equipment and maintenance expenses were reduced under 18%. We've also took a hard look at facilities and utilities and kind of deferring some of the maintenance works in the future year and reducing the budget by about 33%. And acquisitions were also reduced by about 35%. This upcoming year is an election year, so we did have to budget for elections. So compared to this current fiscal year where it has a 0 budget, there is money set aside for elections. And then, as I mentioned, capital improvement projects, the capital expenses dropped with the Rancho Cañada del Oro bridge and day use area wrapping up. So kind of seeing a lower capital improvement budget compared to this current fiscal year. And then kind of taking a note off the leverage, we continue to bring in grants to augment our revenues. And for the upcoming fiscal year, the total expenditures that we're presenting of about $18.7 million it's actually being reduced by grant funding. So in essence, we're only utilizing about 17.5 million of our own money. And that's only that's considering that outside funding that's for mostly for capital improvement and restoration, because outside funding that we receive for acquisitions, where the grantor actually directly puts the funds into escrow, and it doesn't even cross our bank accounts or comes through the OSA. It doesn't show up in our budget. And so that's even more money that we've leveraged that's not showing up in our books. But with that, that does conclude our presentation. But if there are any questions regarding specific line items, I'm more than happy to address them or answer them. But thank you. And staff recommends the board approves the fiscal year 24-25 budget and annual work plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was extremely comprehensive and were very well done.
Thank
So
you.
I really appreciate the thorough analysis and all the department breakdowns. And I think you took the feedback from the ABC committee and trying to make the budget a little easier. I know we peppered you with questions and I saw that you figured a few slides. So thank you. Appreciate that. Excellent job. I mean, you guys are doing a lot and, took a decrease due to fiscal restraints, which I think is very good right now. And I think it also shows responsibility on behalf of the staff. So again, I really, really appreciate this. Okay, so I want to make sure that they're still in the public hearing portion of the meeting. So I'm going to make sure that there are any questions from the board, and then we'll open up to public comment, and then we'll close the public hearing. Got it. Questions?
This was, I agree, this was like the primer on what does the Open Space Authority do, so any future board members should listen to this meeting. And we should probably re-listen to it every once in a while. The interest income I saw, 375, seems to be growing, and are we is that because we're getting higher interest rates because rates are higher, or?
Primarily, yes.
And there's some of that, it's like we're not necessarily as constrained with those funds as others. Is that true, or they just kind of stay in their own pots?
They stay in their own pots. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation.
Dr. Kenneth?
Also very well done, and my only question is how many dress rehearsals do you guys go through? You don't have to answer that, but I feel I have the answers at my fingertips to questions I know I'm going to be asked coming down the road. I do really appreciate it. Well done.
Director Barr, any questions? No? Okay. And do we have any comments from the public?
Shall we open the public hearing?
Yes. We should open the public hearing for public comment. Yes.
There are no public comments.
Okay, bearing there's no public comments, then we will officially close the public hearing. Okay. Yeah, she got it. Again, thank you, really. I mean, it's a lot of work. I like the format, with a capital program, because I'm like, oh, this is like the city of San Jose. Well, we have our now we break it down to what we call CSAs. So it's like, you have your roles and that's like, this is getting easier for me to follow because I can align it to my work, which I think that's helpful, and they might be helpful to the public too, because they're and this budget process is much better than the city of San Jose's too. So thank you again for making it stress-free as much as possible. I'm sure it's very difficult to get all the presentations coordinated and everybody here and present all this information in quick summary time. So again, my deepest appreciation for it. All right, so I think we've done all the public portion of it. So now I'm looking for an official motion.
I'll move approval of the staff recommendation.
I second.
Okay, So we have a motion to approve the annual budget and the work plan and salary position pay plan for fiscal year 2024-2025. Moved by Director Potter and seconded by Director Alexander. Call roll.
Director Kenneth,
Yes.
Director Flotter,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Alexander. Yes. Director Potter.
Yes.
Okay, your budget is approved. Yay. You probably look like, yay. No, I know it's a lot of work. Okay, now we are on to committee meeting summaries, which is the Administration and Budget Committee. Lee, did you want to do a quick synopsis? It was a great meeting.
Sure, thank you, Director Chapman. The ABC met just prior to this meeting, continuing on with our governance principles document. Caroline presented an item on board training and development that we'll be bringing to the full board probably in September, if I read lips. Did you say December?
December.
Thank you. Okay, in December, not September. But outlining some of the crucial trainings to ground new board members. Proposal maybe for a little mentorship from senior board members as well to help new board members along and the like. So we'll bring that for full feedback in a few months.
Thank you very much. And Caroline was a great job. All right, informational reports, General Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few of the managers, I think tonight that may have a few things to update you on, but we'll try and do this quickly. I just want to start off first by letting you know, if you didn't already, you have a very talented staff. Very talented managers especially. And today at their staff meeting, I made 2 announcements. Just letting all staff know that our Natural Resource Manager, Erin Abear, was just accepted into the National Conservation Leadership Institute, which will start in October. It's about a 3/4 of a year program. He is in cohort 18. I was in cohort 2. So do the math. I think it's probably new, it's probably improved in the 16 years since I took it, but I'm really excited that Erin has been accepted. It's one of the premier leadership training programs for conservationists in the United States. And also, Megan Drager just returned from Conservation Finance Boot Camp at Yale University. And so it's also a very prestigious program, and can't wait to hear what Megan learned there, which can only help us going forward. So just wanted to make that, because they're not going to toot their own horn, so I have to toot for them. Next Friday, week from tomorrow, the Children's Discovery Museum is dedicating the Exploration Portal, which is the next phase, the add-on to Bill's Backyard Bridge to Nature. Both of those projects we funded and supported through our Urban Grants program. So it starts at 11 a.m. on the 21st, and would love for board members, if you can attend, to be there, especially those of you representing kind of the downtown San Jose area. And Megan, do you remember offhand what the grant was? Was something in the neighborhood of 250? Okay.
I don't quote me, but yes.
Yeah, it was a capital grant.
Yeah.
Anyways, I know CDM is very excited about this ribbon cutting and very excited to have us there. And then at stiff competition at that exact same time, the Silicon Valley Leadership Group is having their Sustainable Growth Summit. It's in person. Remember the location?
In Redwood City at the Oracle campus.
11 to 4. And they gave us a very generous, open-ended, invite your staff, invite your board, come join us. So you're so inclined, I think Mark is going to be representing us there.
But if you'd like tickets, please let me know.
Mark, you want to go next?
Sure, just briefly, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, our new communications coordinator, Avery Cruz, who brings with her significant expertise in the journalism and public health sector, and so a really important perspective for us. She'll start by the end of the month. Interviews were Tuesday, offer extended Wednesday, accepted Thursday, and just really smooth process. And thank you to the team responsible for that. We're excited to have another Cal Poly Mustang on board. And so with that, I know Lucas and Nick also have quick updates. Do you want to go?
We just go around and I think actually we all.
All right.
But we'll all be brief. So a couple of quick things. Thank you very much for acknowledging the staff's contribution to the budget process. I just want to publicly thank my colleagues for digging deep into their pockets and being very, very responsible with this budget. Great work, everybody. Election costs. Earlier this evening, you approved a consent item for election. And since we submitted that report, the Board of Supervisors has approved a new fee schedule. So the estimated cost we receive in March for the 3 districts, 1, 3, and 4, was about $1.1 million. The new estimate is 1.3. So just want to keep you in the loop. The last time we paid candidate statements, for example, about $3,700 a piece. They seem to range this for this upcoming election, $4,200 to $4,700, depending on the population of the district. So again, just keeping you in touch with the increased costs of the registrar of voters. Hoping to save you some money. Yes, that would be fabulous. And some really good news. It looks that we have no agenda items for July 11. So I think you can erase this board meeting, the next board meeting off your calendars. We'll time off for great behavior. And then last but not least, your new vests smartly being modeled by Director Potter and Mark Landgraf over here. Please remember to take them home with you. We hope you enjoy them. Thank you.
One quick update for me, Picardo Trail is now fully open. Our staff has completed the FEMA repairs out there. They demobilized everything this week, so that is fully repaired. Learned some new skills about building some huge rolling dips with the excavator and tractor. So we have a new skill set under our belt as well.
Quick update on last weekend. Last Saturday was the opening of the Hidden Meadow Day Use Area and Yagas Creek Bridge project. Special thank you to the directors who could attend. It was a really lovely event themed around our expansion of accessible features at the preserve. And if you're wondering, that's the ribbon on the wall there. We had about 100 people there, so really, really good turnout. I think you all received an email last Monday from Charlotte with some photos and a link to the Great Mercury Times article. We're filming an open road episode that'll be aired, I think, around August. So keep your eye out for an announcement of that date as well.
Yes, 3 updates. So I think, as you all know, there's lots of work happening along Monterey Road in Coyote Valley. The city's land use study, post wildlife crossing study, and of course our work on CV camp planning the properties on the west side of Monterey Road. Long identified as a gap is the street design of Monterey Road itself in Coyote Valley, the streetscape, street safety, how it looks, how it feels, how it functions. We were pleased to see on San Jose City Council approved its budget on Tuesday with $100,000 earmarked to look at streetscape design on Monterey Road, and we've committed to matching that and incorporating it and coordinating it with our work on CV camp. So lots to still work out there in terms of the details of the scopes, but I'll be working closely with San Jose DOT to get that off the ground. Another update, as you may have seen from Charlotte's email, on Monday and Tuesday, ABC7 featured our Picturing Coyote Valley photo contest. We were happy to see that, and a big thanks to Charlotte for coordinating that great press. If you didn't watch it, I recommend watching the clips. It was great to just see not just the photo contest promoted, but they really talked about what we're trying to do in Coyote Valley and kind of broadcasting that vision for the entire Bay Area. Last Friday, we had 39 entries, 39 people entered the contest, 79 photos. That was before the news aired, so we're hoping for a big uptick this week. We'll get another update tomorrow, but encourage you all to continue to promote the contest, especially the youth category. We haven't gotten many youth entries yet, so open field there if you know young folks that might want to take pictures. And then lastly, an advance heads up that we're still finalizing the details, but we're planning a series of Understanding Coyote Valley open houses that are going to summarize all the work we've been doing on CV camp to date. The first one, we've booked the Morgan Hill Community Center on August 16th. in the afternoon and evening. These specific times we're still nailing down, but it will happen that evening to coincide with the last Friday night concert in downtown Morgan Hill. It's a Latin rock band. Would love to have as many directors there as would be available to come and see the work we're doing. We'll do 2 more after that, one in South San Jose and one somewhere else in San Jose. More soon. Thank you.
Great. I wanted to preview an item that's going to come before the Land Use and Stewardship Committee and eventually the board. Staff have been having some discussions about old policies. And of particular note is this land classification policy. And it is essentially a policy that says, you know, we should name this thing an open space preserve. We should name this thing an agricultural reserve. And it also talks about so-called stewardship zones. This policy was created in 2003, which is the year my niece was born. Pretty sure she's in college now. So the policy has grown and probably needs updating. So I know the July Land Use and Stewardship Committee meeting is quite full. So it might not be at that meeting, but staff will come back to you with some policy revisions, some updates, and just kind of be in dialogue with the board about what's useful in you know, how we designate things and to a related sense, how we name things by extension.
And no report from me this week.
I do have a report, but just to keep front of mind all of our awesome opportunities. We still have a staff accountant employment opportunity, accepting, which Justina would love your support to help support everything we just talked about today. That is available for application through this coming Monday, the 17th still. Just today, our associate open space planner position went live, so that's now out on the street. This is, as Nick alluded to, Jennifer Path will be focusing on long range planning, so this is specific for capital projects and all of the projects you heard Lucas talking about today. And then shortly on deck behind that will be an open space technician 2 coming late June, early July, as well as an ag specialist finally. And then interns later in the summer too. So lots going on, and just appreciate your continued, oh my gosh, and I forgot Megan, how could I? I'm sorry, Megan. It's because it's in that weird limbo land. External funding coordinator application window has closed. For this position, we've received 29 applications, which for a grants position at the Open Space Authority is really great statistics. And we are working towards final interviews before the month is out. And so hopefully we'll have another great, awesome person to introduce you all to later this summer.
Madam Chair, that's it.
Okay, wow. Legal counsel. No report, okay. All right. Board member liaison update. So over here, it's the section in the corner.
I wasn't here last time. I was attending my granddaughter's graduation from high school. And on the way there in LA, I passed through Agora Hills and I saw the construction of that overpass. And I mean, it's 6 lanes, the equivalent of 6 lanes wide. And it is an amazing, it's an infrastructure, but it looks great. So we have something to build for. Other than that, I really have no report other than my granddaughter who took a foreign language and she took American Sign Language. And at her graduation, she signed the national anthem. Never seen it done before, and it was quite a show. So anyway, I'm just a proud grandpa.
Yes.
No report.
No report, okay. I'm going really fast. It's been busy. So there's LAFCO meeting, there's a LAFCO ad hoc policy meeting. All I can say is an eye on that. Special district met. And Mark, I had a question. They gave us an update on HR 725. Is that something that's on your radar? And they were also asking for letters of support.
So HR 7525?
HR, did I miss the That is the number,
That's,
right?
that's the one
Definition of
I'm
special
familiar with.
districts.
It defines special districts at the
Yes.
federal level.
Yes,
Yeah, that one, passed the House and is currently, there's a companion bill in the Senate that would do the same thing and then they'll merge. But so far it's, we've expressed support directly for that and it's doing well.
okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you. I had that as a note. And then attended the Deus ribbon cutting. That was a very fabulous event. That was really, really fun. And on a personal level, we wound down the budget process for the city of San Jose. One more council meeting to go and I'm looking forward to July. Because this week has been crazy. There's a number of things coming forward. Just if you're interested is they're putting forward sites for safe sleeping sites and one of them is in South Coyote Valley. There's a possible park bond, so there's polling that's been done. So that's gonna come to council on Tuesday and what's third one? Oh, downtown high rise and possible citywide incentive for parks, fee incentive. So 3 hot topics on parks coming to next Tuesday.
No report.
Just a quick one. I just wanted to thank the general manager and staff for their work on the ad hoc committee on financial sustainability. And I know it's going to continue, but it was, there was a lot of really good strategy and so it was very much appreciated. And then I also thought there's some real, we definitely have a smart staff because you give away open space authority uniform swag on budget night. So that's definitely smart thinking. Thanks. That's it.
Okay, no other comments or questions from the board? All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.